there's a bit of backlash going on with um, Benny Johnson. And I'm not sure I guess I understand it. I mean, I also wanted to kind of get a Christian's perspective because a lot of people are using his Christianity against him.
Right.
The TLDR, the short version of this is that people didn't like that he brought somebody on his show that they didn't like. So, Benny Johnson brought on Mr. Tate for some sort of interview. Now, when I look, the review, the like to dislike ratio is overwhelmingly positive. 32,000 up to 1,000 down. So that's more than 90%. So I didn't see a huge backlash from his own viewers.
Mm-hmm.
There are people in the comment section saying like, hey, you didn't really push him on certain things. This was just kind of like a love fest, blah, 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 blah. The same kind of stuff they would say to Joe Rogan for maybe having him on and saying like, hey, you didn't push forward. You didn't push him on enough. Mm-hmm. And then they're using his Christian faith against him. They're saying, you're a Christian, you're a father. How could you do this? Then Ben Shapiro puts out a whole video complaining, saying, well, yeah, I mean, he literally calls out Benny Johnson by name and says, basically, what are you doing platforming this guy? And like, when people complain about platforming, it reminds me of like the 2016 bedroom feminist crap, where they're like, oh, you can't platform. Like back when I was in the gaming world, and they're like, well, you can't platform Jeremy at Gen Con because he said things that we don't like, that kind of stuff. I don't like it when people complain about that. But Benny got a lot of heat from like Ben and a lot of kind of the usual suspects. I know that Tate's not a good guy, or at least he's not a guy that's done good things. But what do you two, I'll start with Melonie because I'm curious about the faith-based angle. What do you think of this? Where they're kind of like using his faith against him for, platforming him.
I didn't actually watch the interview, so I don't know at what capacity he had him on there. I think that as a Christian, then it definitely is not good optics to have somebody who is promoting everything counter to the word of God on there. If you're propping him in a positive way, I think that if you were to have someone on there and you wanted to actually kind of press him on these things and pick his brain and say, do you realize that everything that you're promoting is very hedonistic, and that everything that you're promoting is fleshly desires that are very counter to principles like the Bible or even what he claims to be a Muslim. So in this kind of scenario, if you want to have him on there, you want to pick his brain, figure out how he thinks, and then also offer your criticisms for what he promotes, then go for it. But if you're going to platform him as some sort of conservative icon, and one thing that I've never understood, and I'm glad that some people are waking up to, is that Andrew Tate does not represent conservative values. I think that conservatives have adopted him because of the fact that we didn't have free speech online for a bit. And this was somebody who was not afraid to speak out against a lot of craziness going on. And he said what he thought. And he definitely helped pioneer us getting more free speech on the internet. I'm not going to pretend like he didn't. So I think that because he did that, then some conservatives have respect for that, or he might say some truths, but and that gets people on board for him. But at the end of the day, conservatives were built on Christian values, and Christian values, I mean, Andrew Tate is completely against the glorification and worshiping of wealth, especially the way that he obtained his wealth through, having a pornography thing. Like whether or not the whole, he's guilty of criminal activity or not, that is beside the point in this situation. Is just what obviously that matters, and it would affect things. But even aside, let's pretend he's innocent. To even run a business in that way is corrupt and against conservative values. To have a pornography business, and especially when he admits like, oh yeah, I was sexting guys pretending to be the girls, allegedly like saying that, then it's just like, dude, this is loser behavior. And and it's also keeping men down. because it's just like, oh, you are making a business out of this, then you are not helping men in this situation. You have manipulated men and manipulated them into giving you money under the guise that you were pretending to be this girl or in that kind of situation. So it's just like, this is clearly a very corrupt, degenerate person who has done corrupt and degenerate things. He can be saved. Jesus Christ can save him. He can repent from this. But presently, it appears that he is unrepentant. And a lot of these things that he is promoting are all very hedonistic, fleshly, degenerate desires, and being conservative, and especially with Christian values, that teaches us to not walk in our flesh and to be disciplined people, and even just masculine values in general is being a disciplined man. And if you are living your life for money, if you are living your life for just physically using women and getting with as many women as possible and putting your value in how many women you can physically be with, that's just degenerate, and that's
so
not
you don't like him.
Thing.
Yeah, so you don't like him. Understandable. I kind of nothing him, basically because I don't want to dedicate my life to trying and figuring out what's true and what's not true about him. But Hannah Claire, like, well, let me ask you this, Melonie, as a follow-up, and then I'll go to Hannah Claire.
Okay.
Like, do you care that Benny Johnson had it on his show?
I can't really say that I care. I'm not going to tell him not to have someone on there. I'm just not going to take it serious. I'm going to think it's a joke. It's just like if you put on Lady Maga on there,
right?
I mean, it's fine. It's like, okay, I think that, like, I ain't telling you who to put on your show, but yeah, I think it's retarded. It's like if you had Lady Maga on there, that's also retarded. Like that's not conservative values to have a drag queen or a tranny on there. It's also not conservative values to have, somebody very counter to like a degenerate on there. So yeah,
fair enough.
That's how I am.
What do you think, Hannah Claire?
Benny obviously had Andrew on because he's a big figure and it's a way to attract viewers. And so business decision wise, I think it's pretty obvious. I don't consume a lot of Benny Johnson's content, so I know that he is a Christian and he talks about his faith, but I don't know that his content is like specifically about sharing the gospel or like
not
teaching Christian
Benny
things.
Johnson is
as a Christian, it's supposed to be. That's where the conflict is. If you're going to call yourself a Christian and you want to wear the label, then you at least need to be living it. And if you are not, we are called to share the gospel. So if you want to proclaim yourself as a Christian and you're not acting like one, then other Christians are going to check you on that. And
did
that's
you mean
valid.
Lady Gaga, not Lady Maga?
No, Lady
Maga, the like trans.
It's a drag queen.
Okay.
It's a dude who dresses like a woman and says Maga talking points.
I think with Benny, the question is like
they're both degenerate. I just wanted to make
they're both degenerate. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And to be fair, Melonie's against him having either one on. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
No, I think the question for Benny is what obligation does he have to push back against Andrew Tate? I'm not surprised that he didn't, because I think the point of booking Andrew Tate for this was to get controversy and to have people engage with his platform, to tune into the live stream, to get a high viewership count. I don't know, because I'm not Benny, what his intentions were in terms of representing his faith or representing his values. I think if we're talking about sort of a calculated business move, Benny did everything he was probably trying to achieve, which is like draw eyes to his platform. I think I'm like you, like ultimately it's a net nothing Andrew Tate, but in the sense that like I think that his background is really questionable. I think the way that he made his money is not good. I don't think he promotes good values, but I understood where people feel like they have to rally around him because controversial speech should still be considered free speech.
Right.
And that's where I think that's where it becomes sort of a gray area where people will be like, oh, well, no, he's this guy and he has this cool lifestyle and like he promotes masculinity and that's really important right now. Almost as if they're asking you not to look into what parts of quote unquote masculinity he's promoting.
Yeah, I don't think he promotes masculinity.
Right.
I think he promotes degeneracy.
Yeah.
And he promotes, you know, not working hard for things. And like, you know, I guess like, it sounds like you're both kind of, I get it. Like, you know, very politically, Hannah Claire kind of put like, he did it for the clicks, which is a fair criticism. That's what a lot of this is. Like Mark Dice basically said, like, well, Benny only cares about clicks. But I think that's such a weak criticism because we all care about clicks. Like we all care about viewership.
I think everyone cares about clicks, but I think with this case, like, I think anyone who expected some sort of like confrontation of Andrew Tate is blind to the reality. Like, people who have Andrew Tate on their show, from what I can see, like, don't tend to push back on him. It tends to be interviews that book him that are sympathetic. So it's not that you can expect anything else. I think if this, you know, I think the real question is like, why do we continue to want to have Andrew Tate booked on our shows? And again, like, it's the lightning rod effect. You knew that it would get clicks, and so you had him. I don't know, what else does Andrew Tate have to talk about? I'm not against him as like, I'm not condemning him as a person. I would never recommend him. I don't support the things that he's done. But like, does he have some kind of expertise that I don't know about other than cam girls and you know, internet stuff? Like, I don't know what you would bring him on your show for. If not,
I would never have him on because I don't like Islam. So I mean, I think I'd, you know, I might bring him on to question when he decided to be, you know, convert to Islam. Seems like a lot of criminals do that when they're in prison. Yeah. It seems like a lot of people who are accused of a lot of different things.
And like, if Benny had him on to be like, why did you pick Islam over Christianity? That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's what they were doing. Like, I don't need Andrew Tate's take on American politics. I don't care what he thinks about that.
So, that's my thing is, I don't know what
the offering.
Yeah, and I don't know what the interview was like, and it just that adds a lot of context, because it's just like, okay, if you have him on there to prop him as some conservative voice, then yeah, that's retarded, because he's not. He doesn't represent.
I've never viewed
values.
him as that. Yeah. Like, I'm like, oh, this is a guy that got
if you
censored.
Just was like, hey, here's a dude that is a very controversial figure, and I just want to interview him and get in his head. Okay, like, find out what he's thinking. Sure. As it just depends on how that was represented. In this case, I don't know.
And I don't like the, like, I kind of agree with the platforming thing. Like, yeah, maybe Benny shouldn't have had him on. Maybe this is not like in alignment with his values or whatever else. On the other hand, like, I am wary to go with like, he's done something bad or he's controversial, so you should never, ever, ever have him anywhere. Because again, that feels sort of like censorship to me. That feels antithetical to free speech.
I would hope. Weird. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, I would hope that if you have him on, like, you are prepared to have a couple tense moments instead of just being like a fangirl. I don't know, because maybe that's what Benny did. Maybe that's not what he did, but
it is what he did. But like, you know, based on the clips and based on the criticism, I do feel like it's weird to have internet randos tell me about my faith and whether or not it goes against it, though. Like, I think that that's a low blow, and that's like a weird, like, Melonie, I see it, right? What does God say about your tattoos, Melonie? Like, your faith is kind of between you and God, and not to be used to like criticize you. I
still think there is a standard, and I get why some Christians don't like me because of my aesthetic and stuff, or they might feel like, okay, I don't know, like they have a more a different view on things, on that element of things. But at the same time, look at how sometimes you do have to establish some sort of standards with when it comes to the faith, especially because look at what happened to Christianity in general. It got hippified. Now people are pretending like being a Christian means that you have to be tolerant of every person and everyone's lifestyles, and that, you know, everyone's going to heaven anyway. And that's not Christian values. And so when you have somebody who calls themselves a Christian, then if you see something that they're doing that is counter to the Bible, then yeah, you want to call that out, especially somebody who, it depends on how if someone's like, oh, they're a new Christian, then you have a lot more grace for them. But if somebody is on a platform and representing Christianity, then yeah, there's a lot of valid criticism. And I think that some criticisms people give me is valid. And there's things that I look back at whenever I was speaking out on my faith and stuff like that, to where, oh, you know what, I think I got that kind of wrong. And so that happens sometimes. So I think that there's nothing wrong with trying to establish some sort of standard for representing the faith. But it just depends. At the end of the day, you still can't tell somebody who they can or can't have on their show, but they can also, you know, if they can criticize the execution of it, I think that's valid.
And you should be able to say, like, that guy is the worst and we don't like him, you know, like, that's also fair. It's not that Benny gets a pass for having someone controversial on. I just don't know that it would have gone any other way. I think he still would have had him on. It's not like he would have been like, oh, I've heard your messages and decided to cancel him, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think, I mean, I don't feel as strongly because I don't have as strong, at least currently, like the faith stuff. I think I'm tempted when people are like, well, I thought you believed this. I'm more tempted to rebel against that. I'd be like, well, I'll have on whoever I want, whether you like it or not.